Recently, I recorded a video sharing my story of how I went from 1600 to 2260 chess rating in 1 year. A lot of you guys found it helpful and asked for more, so there we go. For today's video, I summarized the 3 key rules that allowed me to make this advancement in my chess strength within just 1 year. So it took me a lot of time to figure it out, and hopefully you can learn all these main ideas within just 10 to 15 minutes. So here's the first example. I'm playing black against Silagi from Hungary, playing white. White here played knight to f3, attacking this knight on e5, and black's gonna do something about that. You may think about that yourself for a second and think, how would you play here if you were black? By the way, of course, these are not just about this position. The very same principles will apply to any other chess position, and I think it's gonna be really helpful. So I'd love to share with you how I thought back then when I was a 1600 rated player, 11 years old. I mean, I played badly, and how I improved that to get to 2260 in 1 year. And actually the following year, I already became an international master. So when you get on track, when you understand the right way of thinking, you can improve at chess much faster than most players think. Anyway, let's analyze the current position. Now, the knight is in danger. It's attacked twice, while it's defended only once by your bishop from g7. Therefore, you gotta do something about it, or else you will lose it. I'm pretty sure most players will say, hey, the easiest way to deal with this is just to trade it off, so why not to take on f3? And that is wrong. Even though I'm pretty sure that that's what most players would play here. So knight to f3 is wrong, and what's the problem? The problem is there is a rule which states to take is a mistake. Whenever you release the tension, you usually help your opponent to move his pieces forward and to start attacking you. So essentially, you help your opponent to advance and to attack you, which is weird, right? You do not want to help your opponent. For example, here, the bishop was doing nothing on e2, and if you help him to move forward to f3, now it targets your opponent on d5. Now, if you continue doing the same thing, because now there is some tension over here, and you may be thinking, okay, let's trade it off as well. Now, that helps whites to activate their queen to put it to a more active advanced square. From here, it attacks this pawn, it controls all these weaknesses along this diagonal. On the next move, he can play rook d1 and put even more pressure along the d file. And actually, there's probably no way for you to hold on to this pawn on d5, and white's position is already winning. Like, we turned an equal position into a lost position within just 2 exchanges, which seemed like a very natural move for many. That's the power of this thing. So don't do that. All right, so knight takes f3 is not an option. What else can you do? I mean, you can just move this knight away somewhere. You can't go here in this direction because it's controlled by your opponent. So maybe you can go knight to c6. What do you think about this move? At first, again, seems like, yeah, the knight was in danger. I moved it to safety. The task is done. But that violates yet another chess rule, which states that you do not want to move your pieces back. Generally speaking, you want to move forward, if anything, right? That's how you make your position more active, how you approach your opponent's position and getting ready to attack. Therefore, you should not move back unless you have no other good options. I mean, of course, if there is no other way to save the knight at all, then knight c6 is fine. But if there are better options, you should not play back. So knight c6 is bad for that reason. That would just waste time and, make your position slightly less active. So what else can you play? What's the right move? The right move is to maintain the tension. Again, you do not want to release the tension. To take is a mistake. But then what do? Well, you just maintain the tension. That's the right approach. So if the knight needs to be defended, then you just do that. You play rook e8 and you defend the knight. Now you let your opponent to do that mistake, to execute an exchange on his own. And as he starts trading, he does the very same mistake we talked about previously. Now he's helping you to make your bishop more centralized, more active, controlling all these diagonals. If white decides, all right, let's take it off, now it helps you to activate your rook. You see that the same rule starts to work in your favor. Now your rook is getting more active, it's put pressure along the e-file, you can possibly stack rooks along the e-file. Now your pawn is ready to go forward, and you see that, again, within just a couple exchanges, your position became a lot nicer. And what did I do myself in that game? Well, I chose the worst option of all, and being a grandmaster now feels so weird, but I played the move pawn to f6. Now, my logic was that I was hoping that at some point he's going to take on e5, and in that case, I'll recapture the pawn, and now I have these beautiful pawns in the center. I'm attacking the bishop, and pawns are ready to go forward, and everything's cool. So I fell into the trap of wishful thinking, meaning that I was hoping that my opponent will be cooperative and will help me execute my plans. But that's not how you deal with chess, right? You have to expect the best moves from your opponent, not that he will help you execute your plans. So the problem with this move pawn f6 is that your white does not have to take here at all. So in the game, he just played queen to b3, you know, putting pressure here, even somewhat looking at the king. And it turned out that my position is just completely awkward. Now this bishop is locked. It's kind of like a tall pawn, just doing nothing because of this pawn on f6. White maintains this strong centralized bishop on d4. Now my king is a little bit weakened here. And like white can just play, you know, rook d1 on the next move, which he did, putting more pressure to this pawn on d5. And black is just completely awkward and can't really do anything. And I lost the game later on. So you can see how basically one incorrect decision can turn your position from sometimes even winning to losing. And like I hope that these ideas are going to be helpful because again, they apply to any game that you play. Here's another game from that period. I'm playing black against Varavin, who's a GM, actually playing white. And currently it is black to move. Now you may think about that yourself, and I included this game on purpose because it's a very common situation. In an opening, we're taught that we need to develop pieces, castle, control the center. So okay, let's say I did it here. Like, what do I do next? Nowadays, it's one of the most common questions that I receive from students. What do I do after I developed all my pieces? Like, what do I do next? Like, of course, if your opponent's king is weak and you can attack it, then your plan is clear. You're going to go for that attack. But what if you can't really attack anything? Such as in this position, what can black possibly attack? Like, there's no way really in any near future for you to attack anything. And what do you do then? Like, a lot of players are confused with that. I was confused as well. I've been thinking for a long time. Actually, that was a real-life tournament game, not a blitz game. And ultimately, I played pawn to h6. Just deciding that, okay, I'm going to provide this escape square just in case for the future, like take away this g5 square so that he can never jump there with his knight. So basically, I wasn't sure what to do, and I played a move that seemed to be useful to me. And that was the wrong thing. Now, let's take it back. And what's the correct way? Well, the correct way, which I was taught later by one of my coaches, is that there are three main opening tasks, in fact, which are to develop your pieces, castle, and to connect the rooks. And back then I didn't know it. Knowing this thing, it makes it super easy, because it's clear that black developed his minor pieces, black has castled, so there's only one task pending, which is to connect the rooks. And you do that by moving your queen. So you do that by playing queen to d7, connecting the rooks. Now, that's the right approach. And knowing this, it's just so simple that nowadays I'd probably play this move within seconds and bullet. But back then, I thought for a long time and I played the wrong move. So, like, again, you can see that knowing the right way of thinking, sometimes things are just much easier. I played h6, white played knight h2, and once again I've been thinking, I still wasn't sure what to do, and I played rook e8. I thought, all right, I'm putting a rook to an open file, potentially maybe I'll move the bishops away and somehow the rook will be active. Which turned out to be another mistake. Now, what should have I done there instead? Well, I mean, probably just the same thing, queen d7, why not? Right? Still following the same rule. I played rook e8, which seemed normal to me, but it turned out that white can actually sacrifice the rook, pretty cool move, and after pawn takes and queen g4, all of a sudden it turned out that there are just way too many threats for black to handle. White is threatening queen takes e6, check to the king, bishop takes h6 is coming as well, because this pawn is pinned down to the king, so black cannot recapture. Also, white can just enter with queen g6, putting up this battery, which he did in the game. I played bishop g5, trying to, at least stop bishop from taking this pawn. But white goes f4, bishop f6, queen to g6, and he's ready to play queen h7 check using this battery. Also, knight g4 is possibly coming, threatening knight takes h6 check using the this pin, and black is just defenseless. White is attacking the king smoothly. Black has nothing to do, and I lost the game within a couple moves. So that's how, once again, I turned an approximately equal position in a losing game within just a few moves because I didn't know a simple rule. And now here's one example when I was already a grandmaster, and it's just an online blitz game. It was white to move here, and white played knight to d4, attacking the queen. Now think about that for a second. How would you play here if you were black? In the vast majority of the cases, the natural automatic reaction of chess players is when your piece is attacked, we gotta retreat, we gotta move it back, right? And so most players would play somewhere, right? Move this queen around. Now, here comes the third rule that really allows you to dominate over most of your opponents. It says offense is the best defense. And here's the trick. In order to win, you gotta know something that your opponents don't know, right? You gotta be able to outsmart them. And that's one of those moments where you can play a move which your opponent totally unexpected. And it happens so often if you know it, like literally you can use it in every game that you play. For example, here, knowing this rule, again, I was already a GM by that time, so I was looking for counter blows. How can I counterattack? And I found the move knight to d3, check to the king. Now, what can white do? Of course, he could take here on d3, but in this case, my queen doesn't have to retreat, it can go forward. Moreover, it cuts off the f1 square, therefore the white's king can no longer castle, and it kind of looks unsafe for white, in some lines, queen e2 will be coming, so like that feels bad for white. In the game, white didn't play this, he played king to f1. Alright, the queen is still hanging. What should black do? Move the queen away? Well, it could be that you have to move the queen away, but first question that you gotta ask yourself is, how can I attack? I actually learned this idea by studying games of Mikhail Tal, one of the former world champs, and it was fascinating to see it because he was trying to attack all the time, and sometimes he was just attacking, sometimes his opponents were creating threats, but Tal was seemingly kind of neglecting them and just he kept attacking anyways. So that would technically be considered a counterattack, but it seemed like he's just not giving much respect to his opponent anyway, he just wants to keep attacking. And so I learned from him, and it worked really well. Now, for king f1, so how can black attack? Is there any attacking forces move that black can play? Yeah, there is bishop takes e2. Now, he can move the knight back and recapture, but then there is no threat to the queen anymore, right? If he moves his knight away. So he decided to recapture by the king. And it actually looks not bad, because the queen is attacked, and now even this knight on d3 is somewhat hanging. What can black do? Again, ask yourself, can I counterattack? So I play knight to f4 check. Check to the king. So my queen is still standing here, but white doesn't ever have a time to capture it because he always has to counter my own threats. So if white takes over here, I would recapture with a queen, and that is nice because not only I moved the queen from danger, but also it actually advanced forward and his king is deadly exposed. In the game instead, white decided to move the king back, but now I can finally move the queen while attacking him. So it's not a retreat, it's not a defensive move, it is an attacking move, and now my queen is safe. He played king to g1, and now there is a little combo that allows black to finish the game off. Rook takes d4, eliminating the defender of the square e2, and after he recaptures with any piece, here comes knight to e2, check to the king, and after king goes to f1, although black could capture the queen here on d4, but there is no need because knight to g3 is even stronger. Double attack to the king. It's actually a useful tactical motif to remember. The king cannot go to e1 because of queen e2 checkmate. Therefore, the king has to go to g1. And if you're familiar with the smothered checkmate tactical pattern, then it's easy for you to find the move queen to f1. And after white recaptures, here comes a beautiful knight e2 smothered checkmate. Now, at first it might seem like, yeah, that was just a specific position, like highly tactical game, but it's not the case. If you're aware with this idea of fence is the best defense, you can use it in literally every game starting from very first moves. For example, you're playing white, you're playing the most standard opening moves, and all of a sudden your opponent attacks you with a move pawn to f5, known as the Russo Gambit. If you're part of the Igor Nation, you know that it's an evil opening, but nevertheless, let's come back to the current position. Now, what do most players do? They see that their opponent is attacked and they think about, like, what do I do about this pawn? And they either take here and then after e4 often find themselves in trouble, or they defend you one way or the other, they play d3 or knight to c3. So either way, they're dealing with a threat to this pawn. Now, if you keep in mind the idea that the best defense is a good offense, then what do? You ask yourself, how do I counterattack? And then you can come up with the right move, pawn to d4, where you counterattack black. You kind of ignore his move. You just play the move which you'd love to play anyway. So d4, and now you're counterattacking. He attacks your pawn, you attack his pawn. If he takes here, your knight can proudly move forward, and you're having a great position. Here's one more example just to illustrate how universal this rule really is. Let's say black goes for the Scandinavian defense. You play knight c3, attacking the exposed queen, it goes back, and then both sides develop. So far so good, and black goes bishop g4. So here's the first threat that your opponent has created. He's putting pressure to this knight, and then he'll be ready to grab your pawn on d4. Now what do you do about that? If we look at the stats from the database, you see that most players are trying to deal with this threat somehow. They try to defend. They either play bishop e2 to neutralize this pin, or maybe bishop e3 to defend this pawn, or finally bishop b5 to pin the knight so that he can capture a pawn. So either way, they're trying to deal with this attack somehow by defending. But your goal is different. You want to counterattack, right? And so the right way of doing so is pretty simple. Just move the pawn forward and you counterattack. And that gives white a superior position right out of the gate. In fact, black's in trouble already. 95, I guess, is the most played move here. And now, like, your knight is actually defended already, so there's nothing white should worry about. But the most fascinating way to finish it off here is actually to take knight takes e5, sacrificing your queen, and then you play bishop b5, still executing a really strong counter blow. Now, if black has to cover, they gotta move pawn to c6, but as you take it, it turns out that this threat of discovered checks is just so deadly. You either want to play pawn c7, opening up this diagonal and attacking his queen, or maybe pawn takes b7 with, all same ideas. And white is just winning. In one game, funnily enough, black played queen c7 himself, trying to stop you from going there, but then after pawn takes, it was checked to the king anyway, and after king to d8, white didn't even need to grab the rook because knight to f7 was a pretty beautiful checkmate delivered by a knight, bishop, and the sneaky pawn on b7. I've tried my best to condense as much chess wisdom as I can within these 15 minutes, but if you enjoyed it and want more, I've got a dedicated course called The Secrets of Strong Players, where I break down all those main differences between an average player versus a strong player and what you need to do in order to get to that advanced level. This covers opening, middle game, end game, and the practical guide on exactly how you implement this in your games. So if you're curious, I'll drop a link below the video in the description and you may go and check this out. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like so that I know that you love this series, and I'll continue the series and what ideas allowed me to progress earlier at my stages of chess development. Thank you very much and have a great rest of the day.